Hi, Nupur. Hey, Gunjan. Good morning. Good. Man, even when I'm thinking of not saying good morning, it just comes out. It just. I was just thinking I should not say good morning. Boy, is anybody else's wrist hurting from too much mousing? Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to put on a small wrist brace, I think. Pretty soon I'm going to have to put on a small, or yeah, I'm going to have to put on a butt brace, I think. I've been sitting on my rear end too long. In a very good way, there's a bunch of people who've been joining the community, which means many people to talk to, many new contributions coming up. So that's good. And I think all of us are, well, I don't know about equally, but all of us are kind of displaced in terms of our normal daily lives. Some of us worse than others, I think. Okay. Good. Well, you know what? I suspect we're going to have quite a few folks join, is my hunch. But let's start now while there's only a few of us so we can have some in-depth conversations. Everybody's got a link to these meeting minutes, hopefully. I'm going to give it to you anyway. Uh-oh. Good morning. Oh, no. I just realized something. We've got both Nikhil and Shalini on the call at the same time. This could be really bad. This could be lots of trouble. Good. So, Shalini, I know you and I have gotten it. By the way, can everybody hear me? You guys can, right? Oh, no. Okay, good. Let's see. Okay, great. Okay, good.
Much better.
Is it? Okay. There it is. Man, I haven't seen Anand since, he was, skinnier. Now it's just, chubby cheeks. It's just, clearly Anand could not hear me try to make fun of him, so that didn't work. Okay, good.
I guess you
Oh, Nikhil, say it again.
Sir, I guess you have muted yourself.
Oh, thank you, Nipur. Man, wow. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that this is actually the second cup of coffee, so you would think I would be over that kind of a mistake, but anyway, good. We're 6 after now. Let's get the meeting rolling. A couple of folks just joined the call, so I'm gonna paste the meeting minutes into the chat. Please jump into the meeting minutes. Please take notes. Put in things that you want to talk about, and hopefully Hasan will come back, because I think we just lost him, which means we only have one individual that hasn't been on this call before. And so it's worth taking just a moment to say, welcome, Shalini. Very nice to have you. And Shalini, if you're in a place to be able to talk for a second, and if you want to introduce yourself, please do.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Yep. Yeah, we can hear you, Shalini.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
Yep. Yep. We can hear you. Or I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Please do introduce yourself if you can.
Yes, sure. I'm Shalini Bhawsingka, currently working as a Ruby on Rails developer in Cricket Technologies. My interest basically lies in dancing. Like most of the time, whenever I get spare time, I love to dance. I find great opportunity joining over here as I'll be able to meet new people. I'll be able to talk to them, such bunch of intelligent people, much more to know. It will be great to know each and everyone.
Nice. Very good. Very good. It's great to have you, Shalini. I was just trying to let everyone know to be kind to Shalini, please. She has had to put up with Nikhil, I think, for most of her life. So Nikhil and Shalini are cousins. So Nikhil and Shalini are cousins, and so yeah, be kind to her. She's already had to suffer in putting up with him. So
I guess she's muting you instead of muting herself.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Good. Okay.
Side effects of newly joining Google Meet using Google Meet. It happened, yes, a few days ago with a friend of mine also. He was not able to find a mute button. I was searching for it for a while.
Oh yeah.
Same thing happened.
Yeah, the mute button is often eludes even the best of us. Okay, cool, good. Well, Nikhil, your audio is kind of coming out in and out a little bit, but I think I got what you said. So it's fantastic to have Shalini with us. She's already not only putting up with Nikhil, but also putting up with my jokes. So that's something to be said for that. We had, excuse me, we had Hasan on the call for a moment, so I'm hoping he'll come back. Couple of things, and we've got Mr. Jain. We've got a couple of topics that I just listed down as things to potentially talk about, but really this meeting's call is to go around the room with each of you and talk about active areas of focus, or if you've been working on something, and if you haven't, then we'll talk about something you might jump into. And so who's got something they'd like to talk about first? Sometimes that's something to show, to demo, and sometimes that's not. Sometimes it's just things that you think you'd like to work on or points of clarification. And actually, maybe Naveen, just knowing and having reviewed some of the mesh sync work that you've been doing, it might be something worth demoing to folks on the call. I was actually talking with Shalini a little earlier this week, showing her some of that work and how it is that some of the user experience can be improved by the fact that Meshery is now cognizant of, or will very shortly be cognizant of, Prometheus and Grafana deployments, and being able to auto discover those through Mesh Sync. So Naveen,
is my audio audible?
There we
Am I
go.
audible? Hello.
Yep, there we go.
Okay. So we were discussing about Mesh Sync. It basically what it will be able to do is, so there are various service meshes that we support currently, but not all of them needs to be installed using our adapters, or not all of them are installed. Some of them may be installed beforehand by anyone. So what mesh sync will do, it will basically fetch all the information and keep the state updated. Like we had also written a little bit of design doc. Architecture design is still pending. And related to this, I had already sent PR, where currently what we do is we just scan the cluster whether there is Istio present or not, there is Linkerd present or not. Basically, the service meshes are present or not, and how it is done is scanning the images. So it is a sort of right method to scan the images to get the deployments and to get information about the service meshes. So, but this we were planning to have two level of discovery, service mesh discovery. So how we are planning to do is, like first there will be separate command and adapter in every adapter. In every adapter there will be a separate command if present. We will call for that command, and like that adapter will itself scan the version and deployments, and it will return back whatever the version and deployments are present. And if it is not present for the adapter, if it does not support that operation, then we will manually scan the images like we are doing currently. So, if with regard to this, I sent a PR where instead of just showing the version number of the service mesh, we will also, like, we have complete knowledge of deployment, what are the containers, and what is the namespace that is deployed in. So, if there are multiple deployments of a service mesh, we can get to know that, and what are the namespaces we can. So we will also know from that single API call only. So this was the progress we made with respect to Mexico.
I think for sure for Shalini that probably makes sense because we kind of walked through that. But for everyone else, for those of you who've been around the project for a long time, as Naveen is describing Mesh Sync, what do you consider that capability enables? Something that's been missing from the project for a long time. How do you think that would enhance the project, change the user experience? I'm going to answer the question for you as you might say it, but
was it a question for me?
Oh no, I was trying to get kickstart everyone else. Yeah. But Naveen, actually, if you want to say it, that would be great.
So basically, I can't remember the term we wrote it. Gray.
Brownfield.
What was it?
Brownfield.
Yeah, brownfielding and greenfielding. So wait, I'll have to look in the docs. Can you switch to that?
Yeah, no, and so actually, I'll jump in and say this, that Naveen is highlighting that the fact that when Meshery becomes much more aware of the environment and is able to discover various objects, deployments, services, various Kubernetes constructs, retrieve that information and pull that info back. And by the way, the info that it would be pulling back is things that you would see if you did a kubectl get pods, for example, or kubectl describe service istio ingress inside of the istio system control plane, that namespace. If you imagine running those commands and the output that you would see, that that's the type of info that Naveen has worked to discover from Kubernetes, pull back from Kubernetes, and then when Meshery has that info, today Meshery is able to do lifecycle management of service meshes through provisioning of a service mesh, which is great, like in to the extent that there isn't a mesh present, but it makes for a poor user experience when you might go to deploy Meshery and you already have a mesh deployed and configured, or you go to use Meshery and you use it to deploy a service mesh, great, and then in the UI, to date, there's really only been like one area of the UI that will indicate to you that there's an existing mesh and that you successfully deployed Istio, for example, and how it's running, how it's configured. That information hasn't been displayed in the user interface, which is a significantly lacking feature, and so this area enables brownfielding, which is a term to describe the fact that that you bring Meshery in after the fact, after a mesh is already up. And the reality is, it's not just the greenfielding and the brownfielding. It's kind of the ongoing synchronization. It's the fact that when someone has deployed a service mesh, that they're not always going to use Meshery as the tool to make changes to that mesh. Things will just happen to it. Services will be onboarded and offboarded. Operators will interface with the service mesh separately from Meshery. Kubernetes will reschedule pods and things, move stuff around. And so Meshery as a management plane needs to be in needs to continually understand what's going on in the environment. And so one of the mechanisms to do that is to actively interrogate Kubernetes and go out and query its API and ask it for current details, current information about the environment. The other way that's a bit more efficient, that's good. That's sort of an active polling mechanism, an active scraping of information from Kubernetes. The other way of synchronizing the environment that's slightly more real-time, slightly more efficient is to subscribe to Kubernetes notifications. Which is to say, to subscribe to Kubernetes events that Meshery would consider interesting. Those events would be things like the successful deployment of a service mesh, or really like any number of notifications. And so part of what Naveen was describing, and Naveen, maybe we could reserve some time on Friday to do kind of regurgitate this description a little bit and do a demo on that call. But part of what Naveen was describing is the fact that when you get into large environments, it can be quite intense to go ask Kubernetes for all of this information and ask it, and frequently ask it for that info. So rather, you'd like to do this synchronization, this mesh sync efficiently. There's a couple of ways to make that more efficient. One is what we were just describing, which is to subscribe for notifications from Kubernetes. So Meshery just listens and receives events. That's a little more efficient. That's good. The second thing that mesh sync can do to be more efficient forms of efficiency. 1, 2 is, Naveen was saying that, right now, if you browse through this design doc a little bit, that it'll talk about two phases of discovery. So even when MeshSync is going out and scraping Kubernetes for information, it might do that in a cursory way as a phase 1 type discovery, just very quickly and go retrieve a light amount of information. And based on the objects that are retrieved, do a secondary set of discovery that's a bit more in depth, but only doing that on objects that are of interest to Meshery. And that way you can begin to build in a hierarchy of the intensity of scanning, of discovering, and do it somewhat efficiently. So that this type of a mechanism, this type of a paradigm of discovering and synchronizing infrastructure, very, very common to management software in general. And that's what Meshery is a management plane. So this, part of the reason that you're seeing that within the project we're calling something by kind of a catchy phrase, if you will, is because this algorithm, this routine of synchronizing information is ultimately quite, should really be at the heart of Meshery itself, because it should just be this continual process that's running and synchronizing with the infrastructure and making sure that ultimately Meshery can provide better value by doing things like evaluating your configuration and the health of your mesh in the real time and telling you, telling you like either you're doing it wrong or something went awry. So very important piece of functionality. If you get some time, like one of the ways I would encourage each of you to contribute is to, code or not, is just in the thought process of what this means and what these various designs mean, and give your input, or just ask questions. Ask really stupid questions. I encourage you to ask the simplest and silliest questions you can, because when you do, everyone else will learn, including me. So that's Mesh Sync. I'm excited about that. That's great. So Naveen, it sounds like I didn't hear you say that you wouldn't demo on Friday. So now I've set an expectation. We're gonna see some of this in action on Friday, assuming that your laptop's fan will last. If anybody has an extra,
We'll try.
Anybody has an extra laptop CPU fan or a heat sink, send it to Naveen. He overworked his laptop. Nice, cool. That's good. Next topic. Anybody have any comments on Mesh Sync, or you? What else do we want to talk about? Nipur, it's getting. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Hello, Lee. Is Simon here?
Yeah, hey, Simon.
Lee, I have a just question about mesh sync. That's really interesting. I really want to figure out what is it for. I'm just as you're asking about. So I just thinking that mesh sync is doing that. Some of the service mesh when you deploy it, then they introduce new custom CRDs, some service mesh too. So what mesh sync does is what the service mesh do is that events are here happening successfully or fail. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, and a little more. And so let me see if I can show what I mean by and a little more. I was doing some Meshery development, and I don't think I'm running Meshery any longer, so I'm starting it up. But the and a little more is that, yeah, one of the pieces of value that Meshery can provide when it has a capability like mesh sync is the one that you described, Simon, which is, hey, when something goes wrong in your deployment, or your service mesh is maybe getting too slow, or you tried to onboard an application and you've got it misconfigured, and so, or maybe you made an update to a traffic routing rule, or any number of things that, yeah, you might want to, for Meshery to be alerted to that fact, and therein for the Meshery user to be alerted to that fact. That's a good example. There are other examples here of how else mesh sync would improve the user experience. One of those that actually Shalini and I were talking about is the notion when you start up Meshery today, you'll often find that it discovers your Kubernetes cluster, and that can make some, using Meshery very convenient. It'll also automatically identify that, hey, you've got any number of adapters out there. That's helpful. But most of the time, you'll find that it's capable of connecting to Prometheus and to Grafana, but it doesn't have those connections, even if you have Grafana and Prometheus deployed in your environment. Well, granted, we're calling it mesh sync, and so the Grafana and Prometheus deployments that I have on my Kubernetes cluster, those are actually the Grafana and Prometheus instances that are inside of the Istio control plane. So just as mesh sync is going out and interrogating Kubernetes and interrogating Istio for how it's configured and where its various components are, part of that component tree is a Grafana instance and a Prometheus instance. Today, the user has to go over and manually wire up a connectivity to those instances. Now that Naveen has been working on mesh sync, this enables the ability to bring in a better user experience to just auto discover the fact that Prometheus is there, or maybe multiple instances. Let the user pick which one they want Meshery to speak to. And so also the same thing. If I've got Istio deployed, it should detect that. So when I go here, it should detect the fact that there's an Istio deployed. This is what it looks like. This is some attributes about it, and show that to me in the UI, so that this experience really is enhanced. Does that make sense?
Lee, I got to that, what you are already discussing. It's a great, I think that's a very good feature. But one thing that's I lost when I tried Istio in my laptop, I'm missing. Sometime we could do a deployment in Istio and forget to do the deployment for ingress controller. So I'm figuring out what's happening inside. I think if we leverage it, that's good kind of thing in mesh sync, that's very nice So mesh sync it's figured out that ingress controller is not deployed, so my user doesn't able to hit that traffic. So when some user mistype or doesn't deploy the ingress control, it's alerted to you. I think that feature could be a great one if we could do in mesh sync as well.
That's a great suggestion. You're spot on. That particular issue that you just mentioned, like, is maybe one of the first points of frustration that people who are adopting a service mesh or trying to operate a service mesh, or Istio specifically, run into, is frustration about like the fact that they know they're running their workloads on the mesh. Why can't they access them? This is frustrating, and they don't understand the fact that they're either not running the ingress gateway, or if they are, they didn't configure it and expose that service. And so, Simon, you're right that I'll say this, that this user interface here is is pretty poorly done, is pretty done in a very cursory way, that not only should it be showing you the fact that you've got these, 6 or 7 Istio control plane components deployed, like whether or not you're running an ingress gateway or not. It should also then give you a bunch more details about the fact that you do have an ingress gateway deployed, and then here's its configuration, which may or may not serve the needs of your freshly onboarded services, workloads. Anyway, yes. So I'm just reinforcing your point that there are any number of changes enabled through something like Mesh Sync, and it has, and that's in part why I was saying we're kind of giving it a special name, and identifying that it's one of those sort of heartbeats of how it is that Meshery and any management software needs to work, because it'll really rely on that capability quite a bit. So no pressure, Naveen.
I also check out the new version of Istio 1.5. So they kind of working in kind of a WebAssemblies kind of a thing. Totally. They introduce some kind of a WebAssembly, has introduced some new things. So I think we could do as well. We could have a plan for that in Mesh Sync as well. That's WebAssemblies is a great way in syncing information from getting into and out. So we could do that implementation in the same way that Istio does for their deployments.
Yeah, yes. Wasm and Envoy filters have been on my backlog for like 2.5 years. You're so right that that's such an interesting area to focus on. In large part because of how efficiently the visibility of the traffic that you can see through there, the efficiency by which you might be able to manipulate it or do things. Yeah, you're spot on. They've only, and the frustrating bit for me after like 2.5 years of wanting to do it is I think maybe I shouldn't say frustrating. In a good way, there's a few contributors that are here now, or enough of them, and the project is mature enough, and some of them are capable enough that we should get to that this year, or like, hey, if anyone's ready to do it, let's start. Like, I agree. There's a bunch of different use cases for things that we might do inside of an Envoy filter inside of Wasm. And actually, Kanishkar, by example, was wanting to get his fingers more dirty with Rust, and Rust as a language would be a great choice for building in some things into Wasm. Okay, good. So thanks for that, Simon. That's great. Ashish. And actually, wait, before we get to Ashish, actually, I should say, Nipur, I think you're still on. We were talking about something. Oh, I think it was a Docker app, maybe, and maybe potentially digging into the Docker app that's there, the start of it. So I know you haven't had time to work on it, but I thought we might bring it up just to make sure you're comfortable with the concept.
Hi everyone. I just went through the issue right now, and I don't have a lot of clue about the issue to be in the first place. But when I was going through, there are just 2 points mentioned in the implementation. One is move the folder or file, which is I guess already done by Ashish, and the other implementation point is Meshery Docker app deployment instruction will need to be updated with the new location. So, what exactly does that mean? Because I went through the link which is available uh, in the description only, Docker app package. It is not currently available. So, I am a bit confused at that.
Yep, the phrasing inside the issue is in advance of where the project is, which is to say, hey, good news, there isn't a Docker app documentation page yet, and so you're right, like that needs to be created. And so, what an opportunity for you to create it! I chuckle only because I just chuckle. Anyway, Nipur had recently written. I'm sorry, Nuno had recently written a Docker app for Meshery, and had he had only done it in a cursory way. Which is fantastic. He's done a good job. I just mean he hasn't been able to spend all the time that he wanted to on it, and so no doubt it needs the way his approach needs some improvement, likely. And also, yeah, we haven't documented for users the fact that that's available for people to use as a deployment mechanism. And so it's a good time to kind of jump into learning Docker app and trying to take the Docker Compose file that we have today for Meshery and making it into the format that Docker app will use. And yeah, kind of learning Docker app, going through there, documenting the fact that we would support that. Right now, so for Nipur and everyone else, there have been a lot of updates on the main README for Meshery. Feel free to express opinion or improve upon it. One of those enhancements had just been calling out fairly prominently how for people to get started with Meshery, and depending upon what tooling they really like or what platform they're running on, I'm giving them links to go get started. For Docker app, I think it points to docs/installation/docker, which is good, except it's actually missing like how to do this with Docker app. So and then Nipur, does that help a little bit?
So I will soon start documenting, and will start before that I'll start working on it and learning the Docker app first of all. Then in the process of that, I will work on how Meshery Compose will the current image of Meshery Compose, how it is working. I need to make compatible it with the Docker app maybe, and then I will document the whole process, and that is the main task, the final step, if I am correct.
Yep, that's right.
That's okay, right. Thank you.
And then as part of that, we might ask that you teach the rest of us about Docker app, because
yeah, sure.
Nice. Okay. All right. Back to the meeting minutes. Very good. What else? Who else has got something to go through? Anand, I know you and I were talking a little bit about sort of the initial work that had been done for Meshery CTL Perf. And when it was accepted, it was acknowledged that it was, cursory in nature, that it was sort of an introductory capability, unfinished. There's, in my mind, kind of two main things to work on here. One is just, an improved user experience, of which that can be described in a few different ways, and I think that you'll do a good job of understanding that. But then two is the notion that there's there's a flag that we desire to support, but the implementation and support of that flag has yet to be done, and the flag is really a dash F, or it could be a dash, sort of an either or dash file. And what that is, you might hopefully you're already aware, but what it would be is, if you have a load test, that a profile that you're looking to initiate, a performance test that you're looking to initiate, you'd be able to load that up in a YAML file, or use this flag to point to a file, as opposed to having to type out all those commands and all those flags on the command line. That YAML file is really the service mesh, the SMP, service mesh performance spec. So it's really this, a YAML file in this format. And you can get an example of this format, one, here in this repo, but two, when you're using Meshery, anymore when you run a performance test, and you get the results, one of the things that you can do is download the results. When you do, it'll download in a YAML file, or in a small file in YAML, and that format is in the same format as the service mesh performance spec. So not only are users allowed to download their results in that format, but so too should they be able to do an import of that format, which means that they'd be able to kick off a performance test, describe how much load they want to generate. They're basically describing all of these fields in that YAML file. So Meshery CTL perf -f, and then a YAML file that basically has all this info.
Yeah, that's good. The do proc command now works. Like, I haven't tried it yet.
Oh.
Actually, I updated it a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, I think what you're about to ask is maybe maybe for more context on the command itself, like, or maybe not.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask that that is the command work now, or it's just the like basic structure of the command, and there's still something.
Yeah, great question. So let's run it really quick. It works. What it'll do is, I think in its most basic form, you need to provide it a couple of flags currently. So Meshery CTL perf, that's funny. You just enhanced it to show you help information, and so I'm going to actually use that feature to help me do this Meshery CTL perf. In its most basic form, I think you need to give it, I think maybe just one flag. So URL, in this case, I'm just going to hit something like github.com because the performance testing that Meshery does can be used against workloads on the mesh and against workloads off the mesh. I think I don't know that actually worked. Let me try it different. Okay. I don't know that that's right now all that you need to specify. I think you'd also need to specify
the cookie. I think it's a cookie.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense since Kanishkar wrote this. And Kanishkar, wow, remind me again. And where do I get my cookie, or what do I?
I forgot. I'll have to check the code. I mean, we'll have to check what cookie does Meshery server send. Then it's like, 1 second.
Well,
I'll just check and I'll put it up on the.
Okay. Yeah. So this is another area that is a good reminder for us that we need to go back and document. But so Meshery CTL will let you run Meshery CTL perf will let you run a performance test, whether you're authenticated through the Meshery cloud provider or whether you're not using that cloud provider, you're just using a local provider. And in both cases, Meshery will facilitate the collection of that of those statistics and sending them back for analysis.
Yeah, I put the cookie in the message. I think that's the one you use for local provider.
Oh, okay. Cookie.
Put it to the message.
Oh, in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, in the chat also.
Oh, I see. Yeah, and I just upgraded this, so local none. And I actually, so this does need to be documented because we just Nikhil is working on a change that will affect this a little bit as well. And that is that basically you'd give it, I think, the name of your provider, which we recently renamed the local one to none. I think actually, even if you don't specify the cookie, if you don't specify the cookie, it's going to assume that you're not using an authentication provider. But here, let's do this real quick. So. Okay. I'm not running book info, so that's why I'm giving it a different URL. That's running entirely too quickly, says it. But Kanishkar, to your point, hold on. Duration. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, it's yeah. Anand, we need to make sure that we have good examples documented. Because I don't think it's...
Yeah, that would help actually.
Kanishkar, I'll try it with what you'd sent. I don't...
Yeah, just try putting it in double quotes. Hope maybe...
Yeah. Anyway, it does work. I'm forgetting either I don't have it the correct in my environment right now. Like in my environment, I'm authenticated differently. Um, so that might be causing an issue because I just signed into Meshery with my through Meshery Cloud. So I'm logging out. I just logged out. Yeah, it's not doing it though, because it would take 10 seconds. So anyway, Anand, just after the call, I'll make sure you've got one that works, so you can do it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you'll actually find that if they're running successfully, you'll just every time you run one, you'll actually see this number increment on the page here. So, but of these two areas of focus, these conceptually these make sense. I'm assuming. Okay. What other topics? What else? Nikhil, I know you're just waiting for me to ask you about the provider UI.
Actually, in fact, I was waiting for my turn when it will go. Actually, I'm stuck in the go part. So if I can get a help or something, that will be much better to do it early. Because the Go code, I don't know Go actually, the Go language.
Sure.
And making up that function to provide the description part, return the description string, not able to understand how to return it by seeing the previous functions.
Got you.
So it's taking a bit of time. So if that's done, then I guess it will not take much longer and the PR will be ready by tonight. If that description part is done.
Okay, good.
You or someone else can do that.
Yeah, let's if you're free just after this call, let's have a quick session.
Yeah, sure, no issues.
Okay. And then Ashish sent a message. I think he was saying he couldn't attend today, but he put in some notes. One of the things that, and actually, Simon, this might be of interest to you, that Ashish is working on incorporating in some enhancements to the service mesh landscape. And those enhancements have to do with providing a bunch more insight about the service meshes that we're tracking. If you think of it, or if it's of interest, ping Ashish because you might find it interesting. We're going to express a fair number of opinions about which service mesh is easier to use, which one is for operators, which one is for developers, that kind of a thing. And so it has to be done very sensitively, but he's tying it off. Another contributor had created some spectrums for comparison previously. He's going to finish that up. Okay, so good. And then, Kanishkar and Naveen, between the two of you guys have been working on some significant new features, new enhancements, both of which would be really nice if you were in a position to demo those or kind of present them on Friday's call. I think that would feel good to get some feedback. People would understand the importance of those foundational things. I think we think that was conveyed pretty well today from Meshery, and of the authorization framework that Kanishkar is working on. It's a little bit behind the scenes, and I don't know that everyone is aware of it, and then also, if they are, realizes quite how meaningful that is to the project and how it will enable a few things. So
I think once once we're able to authenticate Meshery CTL using the tokens, then there'll be some demonstratable work. Like otherwise, it'll just look like normal login and everything is working. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's maybe I could. Yeah, maybe the use case diagram might something like that might clear out what we're trying to do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, between the logical diagram and the sequence diagram, I think those are.
Yeah, that might be helpful.
You can also teach everybody what an access token is and a refresh token is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Do anyone else have something they want to chat through?
Okay, Lee.
Yeah.
I just checking on the architecture diagram of Meshery.
Yeah.
So we have. I am just seeing with some kind of update. We have some showing 3 icons there from wherever from using the Meshery CTL. So I have seen that. I think it's rather to show the icon. We just show the Meshery CTL command there. So I've checked other. I'm doing research on that. There's what other projects are doing. I think we should show the Meshery CTL commands, because if we do the icons, that is get the feeling that it's only figurable because on the laptop, on the cloud or everything. I think if I talk about Kubernetes kubectl command, they just show the kubectl command there. So regardless of wherever we are running on that, I think it's in the architecture we should show the Meshery CTL regardless of wherever that's is landing, because people, if we showed some icons like on the laptop, on the cloud, on the everything, that might be in future in some other cases we might do some integration there. So it's kind of a bad look. I think we should go for one commands and then get the feeling that is running from everywhere.
Okay, yeah, if I can play that feedback back, it was the current architectural diagram that we have doesn't include these bits to the left. It doesn't include the fact that Meshery has a REST API, and that that any client can go interface with that REST API. That there are 2 clients that we include in the project. One is Meshery CTL, and the other one is the Meshery web interface, the Meshery UI. This third one we don't include, which is just to say, hey, anyone can write a script or a program to interface with this REST API. And I think one of the comments that you'd made before was like, hey, it's not, and based on the current version of this diagram, it's not entirely clear where Meshery CTL as a tool fits into the architecture. And so this is trying to help inform people of the fact that it is a tool and kind of where it fits. And I think part of what you're saying right now is that in general, this is an improvement. One thing that you consider might be even more helpful is, instead of telling people that there's a component here, a binary component called Meshery CTL, that we would, instead of showing a picture, we would list out a Meshery CTL command as an example.
Yes, Lee. Last our discussion was that we have 2 plane there. One is the client and the server face, so where commands go send. So right now in the newer version of diagram that I see, we included 3 icons there to to show that we can interact with the Meshery, with the Meshery CTL, Meshery UI, and the script we are running through. So my point is that regardless of we are showing the difference between the UI and the client and the script, I think we should do the sample icon that's the Meshery CTL command. So behind that, where you're running from is not a issue, is not a big deal. But there is a command that you need to interact with the machine. And behind that, we have the mobile UI or the script, or that's generic to us. And you can do that easily. I think the point that I'm making here, that's where I'm talking about the Kubernetes or other, they're just showing the client face and the server face. Where the API server are involved there, and to interact with the server, you have a kubectl command. Regardless of running in the Amazon cloud or in the data center, in the locally or the laptop or anywhere. So that's I'm trying to say.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, that's a good point that you're making, that right now this diagram, or I guess there are multiple versions of an architecture diagram that can be insightful, that can help provide clarity. I think part of the great point that you're making here is part of what's going on in this diagram is it's a mix between a pure software architecture diagram and an example of a deployment, a bit, like, because it's saying that, hey, that you might be running Meshery in Docker or on Kubernetes, and so it's kind of saying, hey, you're doing potentially one of the two, and that logically there's this separate service mesh. This service mesh could be inside of Kubernetes. Let me think on that a little bit and see if there's a couple of versions of this that might really help clarify and make some sense between example deployment models and just raw architecture, raw software components. I'll try to do that. Also, in the meantime, if feel free to jump in and try as well. There's kind of two versions of this diagram. This one is an SVG that I was just editing the SVG itself. The other version of the diagram is in Google Slides, in the Meshery architecture Google slide. And so it's also downloadable as an SVG. And so the latest update that I did, for better or worse, didn't do it inside of Google Slides. It's worse that I didn't do it there because everyone can go use Google Slides and do that. I ended up doing it inside of Illustrator because I was trying to do a few things to make it look pretty on the web. But anyway, either way, your feedback makes sense. I'll try to incorporate that. Feel free to jump in as well if you're inclined. All right, we're a few minutes after. Anything else for today?
Okay, Lee, I think we could do that discussion on this separately. I think we can have a next meeting. Can we do it in tomorrow's session as well? Just for one-on-one with you.
Yep, yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. So yeah, potential discussion item for the community meeting. Yeah. All right, fair enough. Very good. So good to have Shalini on for the first time. And then, yeah, we'll talk to everybody on Friday. Nikhil will catch up with you here now.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Thanks, guys. See you soon.